What's up, Steph?
What's up, man? How you
How you,
doing?
how you doing, buddy?
Good.
I'm sure I've done a huge intro, but for those that don't know, Steph Carter was the guitar player for the celebrated legendary band, The Gallows. Was it Gallows or The Gallows? I always said The Gallows.
It was just Gallows. Like
Okay.
people always said the Gallows, but it was just Gallows.
I think it's a Texas thing with me. You say the everything, like the blah blah blah. But so Gallows, with you and your brother, and you guys, your brother Frank, who has Frank Carter and Rattlesnakes now, and man, there was a lot. That band had just a lot of legs, and it reached a whole lot of people, and it was this thing that it's like most great bands. Like sometimes the energy of the band is so great that it combusts. That
Yeah,
it gets ahead of itself, and things just happen so quick for it that it's human nature. You just go, what and it just implodes, and that kind of happened with Gallows, right?
yeah. Like we were a band that was it was all about the performance and it was all about the explosion on stage. And what you saw on the stage was a bunch of dudes who, at that time in our lives, we were all very different people, and it was the culmination of people feeling angsty, people feeling frustrated, people feeling angry, and getting on stage and trying to figure out if we were going to make it to the end of the show every night.
Right. Well, and that was the thing. This was like 2007, and
Yeah,
we Gallows, Rise Against, a whole bunch of bands. We did like a world tour, which I don't think really happens much anymore. But it was Australia, Japan, and Europe. So
yeah,
it wasn't quite the world, but it was a lot of the world. And so we were out together for how long was that tour? 2 months, something like
yeah.
that.
We were out together for a while on that one.
Yeah. So, and every night, your brother, Frank, who was a singer, basically dared the audience to kill you guys.
Yeah,
Like, basically took on I remember it was maybe the first night in Australia, your brother started the show with just telling Australia that every one of them in that crowd was the prisoners of England. Like you were the worst people from England, and they got
yeah,
voted off the island essentially, and that now they're on this prison island. It was, and that was kind of every night.
yeah.
It was
That
it was awesome.
that was the way that most shows went for us. It was, let's just see who we could pick a fight with in the audience, and
Yeah,
let's just get people riled up from the word go. And then by the time we left, everyone was either having a great time or everyone was ready to kill each other. It was one of the two.
yeah, and it was great. It was always great to watch. But man, what a great band! I remember being so like sort of disenchanted with what was being called punk rock at that point, and what was passing for punk rock. I think I've been sort of disenchanted with what's passed as punk rock since like the 90s,
Yeah.
It's gotten into this thing that it's just personal taste, but then to have a band come along that actually was dangerous again and was sort of playing by their own rules and sort of didn't really sound like anyone and just doing their own sort of thing was really refreshing.
That's
Um,
that's really good to hear. I mean, that means a
yeah.
lot coming from you as well.
Oh, thank you.
Like, but yeah, for us, it was all about just being the most authentic us that we could be. We every single one of the band had such a wide, varied music tastes coming in together that we kind of took a little bit of influence from so many different places, and it amalgamated in this very, very British, but
Yeah.
like British sounding American hardcore influenced
Right.
European punk band.
Right, and that's what was genius about it because you could definitely tell there was an American hardcore influence, but you weren't a British band desperately trying to sound like an American hardcore band because I've heard that too, and it's real
Yeah,
obvious.
yeah.
Um, you were a British band that had American hardcore influence, but you were still very British, and to a point of where and it's sort of hard to quantify what that sounds like or what that is, but I don't think an American band. There's no way an American band could have sounded like Gallows. There's no fucking way. It just
No,
wouldn't.
I,
It
I,
wouldn't have
I
happened.
don't think so. And I think if we tried to go down the route of sounding like an American hardcore band, the band never would have taken off because people would have just seen straight through it. Because it
Ab-
was
Absolutely.
when you're authentic about it, you've got a level in there where kind of people get to buy into the fact that they believe in it.
Right.
because you believe in it yourself. And if you don't believe in what you're doing and you're trying to be something that you're not, people see straight through it.
Well, I think that's such a good way to put that. It like for instance, say Refused were basically at first trying to do like a New York hardcore or an American hardcore sort of thing. They even the way they dressed in those old photos and stuff, but there was still something very Swedish about even their earliest stuff. And then of course
Yeah.
we all know what they turned into, and then basically ended up being a band that every band tried to repeat, and no one did well enough because of what you're saying. They were very Swedish, uh, but with all these influences on their shirt sleeves and just coming through a very Swedish lens. And you guys had the same thing where it was just coming through with a very British thing. And it's kind of like, where I'm from, Texas, there's so many bands that do like metal, but it's very Texas. So it comes
Yeah.
out as Pantera, or it comes out as, Power Trip or whatever it might be. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So like I said, your brother was in the band. Is in. We're supposed to be talking about guitars, which we'll definitely get into. That was another thing. Even before I knew you, I always liked your guitars. I was like,
Oh,
man,
thanks, man.
that kid, that kid knows his guitars, because I was a fucking guitar dork as well. What started you playing guitar?
um, so I heard Oasis.
Yeah.
I heard Noel Gallagher playing like "What's the Story, Morning Glory," that whole record, and I was like, "Fuck that! That's a guy that knows how to make a guitar sound massive, but there's melody in there.
Yep.
You can hear the clarity of what he's playing. There's notes in there. There's rhythms in there, and I just kind of fell into it, and I was like, this is fucking awesome. And then I fell down this rabbit hole of like they were kind of my entryway into heavier music. And it's funny to say that now because Oasis are not the heaviest band in the world by a long shot. But it was kind of that was the thing that got me into it. My mum's a dance teacher. My dad's a saxophonist.
Oh, okay.
And I just remember one year I was like, right, I think I want to do this music thing. Like I've seen this band playing, I've heard this record that's just completely and utterly taken me by storm. I was like, these guys get to go and do that for a living. That's their job.
Right.
And I'm like,
Right.
why would I not be able to do that? Surely I can give this a go. And then I was like, fuck, I need to learn how to play an instrument. So I was like, Mum, Dad, I want a guitar for Christmas. And my dad was like, I'll buy you a guitar. And he bought me a keyboard and was like, you learn to play that and I'll buy you a guitar. So I learned to play one song on the keyboard. I got one of those like Casio keyboards
Yeah.
where it's got a tiny little screen on it and you push the demo button on the song and it shows you what notes to play on the screen. So I learned Pachelbel's Canon, like a proper sketchy ghetto version of Pachelbel's Canon by following this tiny little LED screen on this
Yeah.
Casio keyboard. And I learned to play that one song. Still the only song I know how to play on a piano today is just Pachelbel's Canon. That's it. And I
Wow.
was like, right, I'll get that. And I played it. And I was like, right, I've learnt the song. Dad, I really want a blue Squire Telecaster. That's what I wanted. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what I want. I want a blue Telecaster. And they bought me a Strat, which is like, it's the polar opposite guitar, but not at the same time. And I loved it. And it was like, it was my thing. And I fell into playing it. And then I started to, at the same time I got the Strat, Deftones became a big part of my life. And I
Yeah.
learned every single Deftones riff that I could possibly learn. And at the same time, like my full name is Stephen Carter. And as soon as I got the Strat and I started playing Deftones riff, my brother was like, their guitar player is called Steph Carpenter. So I'm just going to call you Steph Carter from now on. I was like, okay, fair enough. So
You got it.
that's how it fell into it. And that was it. And, I went through a phase of learning every Deftones riff I could learn and then learning every Smashing Pumpkins song I could learn. Went to see the Smashing Pumpkins play in Wembley when I was like 14 and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then that was it. It just led me on this journey to fucking talking to you today.
Wow. Man, Smashing Pumpkins, Jesus Christ. I know a lot's been said about Smashing Pumpkins, but I saw them because I don't, how old are you now?
37.
Okay. Yeah. I'm easily 10 years older than you. But I saw them in the 90s on their way up, and they were opening for, oh God, Soundgarden on the Bad Motorfinger tour, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was also like Pearl Jam were the first band. So, and then Smashing Pumpkins. And I also saw Smashing Pumpkins on that same year. I believe they came back through with Red Hot Chili Peppers, which I really just went to go see. But anyway, God, what a fucking amazing band. They still are.
Yeah.
And what an amazing guitar player. I mean, it was even back then, I was like, man, there aren't really guitar heroes. I mean, in the classic sense, even
Yeah.
at that point. And he was, Corgan was definitely that then. And he's definitely is now. But yeah, man.
100%. And I remember like going to that show, and it was it was one of the coolest things I'd seen. Melissa Althemur was playing bass for them at the time that I went to see them as well. James Iyer was playing guitar for them. And then, like, I remember years later, we played South by Southwest. Like, must have been 2007. So it must have been that same year we did that world tour. And I remember being at this show, and we did this show where it was like Gallows and Amy Winehouse, which is
I remember
show.
that. I wasn't there, but I remember that. Yeah.
So we ended up doing that show, and I remember playing and looking up, and I was like, fuck me, that's James Iyer from the Smashing Pumpkins. This is the weirdest thing ever. And then I was like, fuck, that's Tom Morello. This is the strangest experience of my life. And then I was like, and that's fucking Amy Winehouse is playing next. Like, how did I get from watching Smashing Pumpkins in Wembley Arena to fucking standing on stage playing in front of James Iyer before Amy Winehouse?
You know why I remember that? It's because I live in Austin, Texas, of course. And I remember that year I was on tour because Rise Against that year, that was my first year in Rise Against. So that was 2007. I had joined I had joined in January, and we were gone 9 months that year, 10 months. It was gnarly. It was just gnarly. And I remember you guys playing, and a bunch of my friends were at that show, and you guys played a few times that year, right?
Yeah, we played like 3 or 4.
That's what I thought. And of course your brother did your brother's thing and just destroyed the place and made like press. And so the pictures from that year was just your brother in the middle of the floor everywhere. And then I met you guys, and then we toured together later that year. And I remember going, dude, you were that band that fucking tore up Austin. So yeah, I totally remember that. Yeah, I mean, what a cultural impact, going back to what you said about Oasis. I think that's awesome because, to you, it is heavy. To you, Oasis have a happy elements, and they have major key songs and things like that. But for the most part, it does hit you.
Yeah,
they're not a total feel good band,
They're like big wall of sound recordings. Like,
exactly.
If you listen to any of the remastered versions of like What's the Story, Morning Glory, or Definitely Maybe, it's just layers upon layers upon layers of riffs and guitars. And I listened to the reissue one not that long ago after I got like my in-ears, and I remember putting it on. I was like, I've never heard this record before, because I was hearing stuff I'd never heard, and it's fucking layer upon layer of amazing riffs just with really great guitar tones. And for like a 14-year-old kid, or like, I don't know, 12-year-old kid in England at the time where they were kind of blowing up, I was like, this is rock and roll music. This is what it is. And it's, you look at it now and you compare whatever rock and roll means to people today. For 14-year-old, 12-year-old me, they were like the epitome of rock and roll. The two brothers who had this massive feuding relationship on and off the stage.
I was about to say that,
because that's
There's so many parallels. There's so many parallels,
Yeah, one of them is the lead singer, one of them's a guitar player, and like they both have this energy on stage. And that maybe that was it. It's just that was the vision I saw for me and my brother in the future. Like, I don't fucking know what it was, but that was it. They were this big, huge band that ended up being one of the biggest bands in the world, and then it ended in a giant explosion. And like now both dudes are doing their own thing, and it's amazing to see. And I'm still waiting for this reunion to happen. It's got to happen at some point, and those shows would be amazing.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I was talking to my best friend about this the other day. He was like the world's biggest Oasis fan, and Bonehead is playing with Liam.
Yep.
Already playing with Liam. So there's 3 of the original. I don't even care if it's the original lineup. Yeah. You know what I mean? Even if
by
it's
the end of it, it wasn't the original lineup anyway, It's
exactly.
Like, you just need those two dudes on a stage together playing those songs that they're both playing on their own, on their own tours. Just come on, just do it.
It's like, and the Who aren't really playing anymore, so they could get Zach Starkey back. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, but I think that's also really cool what you just said. It's like, here's a British kid getting introduced to rock and roll music and actually having the thought, this is rock and roll music from Oasis, where I'm sure, you know, their version of that was, Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
Rolling Stones, the Who, whoever, or even Paul Weller, who actually Noel Gallagher said 1,000 times that was his guy, and
Yeah.
saying like, this is rock and roll music. And then they did it for another generation, which is probably exactly what they set out to do in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, they've got, you look at it and you look at most people who picked up a guitar. I guarantee a lot of people from the UK who were around my age that picked up a guitar when I picked up a guitar were influenced by Noel Gallagher. Same
Absolutely.
as dudes in the mid 90s who were picking up a guitar in America probably picked it up because of Slash.
Slash, and then there was the Slash guys and there was Kurt Cobain guys, the guys that were like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to be a lead guitar player, but I can change the world with a bar chord. And they did,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
did. And, to this day, I hear, that Dave Grohl still has like a disdain for lead guitar solos. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just not the aesthetic. It's just not, whatever is in there. Um, wow. Yeah. I it's revelatory, really, and that's what makes this whole thing so great. Like what we
Yeah.
do. So Gallows sort of imploded. I know you guys made, was it a record or just an EP with our friend Wade from
We
Alexis on
did.
Fire?
So when I was still in the band, we did an EP. So Frank and I did 2 records together. We did Orchestra of Wolves. I kind of joined the band after Orchestra of Wolves had originally been recorded in its first instance. Like there were so many things that had happened during the band to that point, and Frank had a pretty tumultuous relationship with being in the band for a lot of his time. He was when we were doing the Gallows thing, he hadn't quite embraced being a rock star. I don't want to say
Sure.
being a rock star, but he hadn't quite embraced what that life could be for him. He's doing it much more now, and he's found a happy place, and he's in a good spot for himself, which I'm really stoked about. But at the time, he hadn't quite figured out what he wanted to do. He was always into tattooing, and he was always into artwork, and that's what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a tattooist.
Yeah.
So during the recording of Orchestra of Wolves, in the first instance, I got a phone call one day from Lags, and he was just like, Frank's quit the band. We need to record vocals to finish the record. Can you come in and record backing vocals for 4 songs so we can finish the record? And I was like,
Right.
okay, sure. So when I did that recording, and then one thing led to another, I ended up playing in the band for 8 years or so after. But we did Orchestra Wolves, we did Great Britain together. And then during the touring cycle for Great Britain, Frank decided to leave, and then I decided to stick out the band. So I did an EP with Wade, and then we did one more record with Wade. So we did an EP that we recorded with Joby from the Bronx out in
Right.
LA. Wade flew down. We all met in LA. We spent a couple of weeks in LA writing the songs together and then putting this record together. And then we did one more full length, the third Gallows record, which is the self-titled one. And then I left the band after that record in like early 2013. And the band has gone on to record one more full length sometime around 2014, I think. And then they haven't really done anything since then.
So have they ever officially broken up, or are they still sort of? No.
I think there's still like a band that is active,
Sure.
but I think it's one of those things that there were some shows they were supposed to do coming out of COVID, but there were some issues with, I think, wage travel. It was where there was all the issues around whether you've been vaccinated or not, and you can get in and out of the country.
I got you.
So there were some issues with that there, and it came around, and there were a couple of times, or there has been a couple of times, where it's been an email comes on, hey guys, how would everyone feel about doing a reunion tour? And then it's like it bats around with everyone for a little while, and then it disappears again, and
Sure.
a year later it comes back, and whether or not it'll ever happen or not is another story. But it's not something that it would be cool to do it again, just to finish it the right way, like,
for sure,
rather than it imploding on itself. Well, we can draw a line.
Now that Frank is in such, has sort of embraced, and I mean, it famously embraced. Like I said, we just played a festival with those guys last year, maybe year before last, and you can tell he's just so happy to be up
Yeah.
there, and it's great because I honestly feel like your brother's one of the better frontmen I've ever seen in my life. He's just such a natural up there. So when you told me, or when he had actually told me that at the first round of the Gallows that it wasn't such a great thing for him, it was really hard to discern because he seemed like he was just owning every crowd that was there, to the point of where
Yeah.
going on after him was like, God damn, Um,
That was
but
always a
he's,
goal for us, is to put
yeah,
any band that plays after us, we're like, we got to give them a fucking hard time.
sure, and fortunately, Tim, our singer in Rise Against, has always been up to any challenge. You know what I mean? Like and so it was great. It was great to get challenged. It was great to like, oh, that's why we loved you guys' band so much. And we did another tour together, did we not? We did.
We did, we did, we did Taste the Chaos together, and then we did, when Wade was in the band, we did a European run of shows with you guys.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I think every time we came back through and played in Texas, you'd always come up and play the end of Orchestra of Wolves, take my guitar, take my Les Paul, and then we'd
That's
get you
right.
to play the end of it while I was jumping around on top of
That's
people's
right.
heads in the
God,
crowd.
I totally forgot about that. Well, anyway, that would be great to see that. What back to what you were saying. What led to your original sort of, was it discontent, or to you leaving the band in the first place?
We kind of we finished Great Britain, and it was such a big moment for the band. The record deal we signed with Warner Brothers was fucking one of those stupid, like, is the next Rock and Roll Swindle Part 2, like Sex Pistols Part 2 is the way everyone in the UK kind of called the band. And like, we signed like a massive deal with Warner Brothers, and it was just one of the last straight record deals. And we spent so much time, effort, energy, and money making this record. Like, we recorded at every fucking studio we could in London. We lived at Rack Studios, which is where Michael Jackson recorded. We did 2 months there. We went and recorded an orchestra playing parts on the record at Air Studios, which is really famous for orchestral recordings in the UK. And then we recorded like a piano in Abbey Road Studio 2 because we could at the time. We made the record with Garth Richardson. And we went to town on this record with him, and we finished the record. We got to the end of the touring cycle. Frank left, went into the studio with Wade to do the other bits, and then we got to the end of recording that third Gallows record, and everyone in the band was like, "This is the best thing we've ever made." And I looked at it and I was just like, "I think the other one's better."
Yeah.
And for me at the time, I was in a really bad place at the time. With my brother leaving the band, him and I had a really fractured relationship that went on for many years after he left the band. And I think I just carried a lot of that weight with me. And the music industry, for anyone who doesn't play, is fucking relenting. And it is hard. It's hard work to be in the industry when things are tough. When it's good, it's the best thing in the world. When it's tough, it's tough.
Yeah.
And I think for me, Frank leaving the band, me carrying on the band with some dude who wasn't my brother, who replaced my brother. Touring, you spend all of your life living out of a suitcase in someone else's fucking pocket. And I was doing that, traveling the world with my brother, and we had my other little brother Johnny would come on tour with us, and he'd film everything. So there was I've got three brothers, and so I'd most of the time I'd have two of my three brothers on the road with me at all times, seeing the world together for the first time. And after Frank left, there was some fractures with what was going on with Johnny filming some stuff with us, and I kind of just felt super alone being in a band with guys who were the next step to being my brothers, but it didn't feel the same. So I was living with my now wife, then girlfriend, in West Virginia, and I just woke up one morning and I was like, I put my 6 months notice in. I'm out. I'm done. We're going to play Reading and Leeds, and when we finish playing Reading and Leeds, I'm going to wash my hands of it and I'm going to figure out what to do instead.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and it's so funny that it's so poetic that it ended at Reading and Leeds, the two, largest, or arguably largest rock and roll festivals in England, I mean, you have Glastonbury and but Glastonbury, it's not as rock as Reading and Leeds anymore,
Yeah, Glasgow's more of like a it now is more of like a pop festival than
That's what I'm
anything, and
saying.
like,
Yeah,
but now I
yeah.
guess the thing with now Reading and Leeds is kind of the same. Reading and
Is it
Leeds
good?
is going
Yeah,
down.
that's
Yeah,
true.
it's like this year the headline is Billie Eilish headlining
Yeah,
Reading and
it seems
Leeds
like
this year.
Download is the only thing
Yeah,
that's.
Download is the big rock festival now, and like that's for me that was it. It was always like this thing of like I'm going to play Reading and Leeds. They're going to be my last shows with the band because up to this point we'd played Reading. I think every single year I'd been in the band. Gallows had played, or we'd gone and done like a secret show as like the Rats, and we'd go and turn up and just no one would know it's us. But it's one of those like worst kept secrets ever. Everyone fucking knew it was going to be us playing. We just go and play the
Yeah,
show. But then when I ended up putting my notice into the band, do this like 6 month thing where we'd all sat down, we'd all spoken about what was going to happen, how we were going to do it. And I ended up not actually playing anything after. I think a week after, I got an email from the management and it was just like, the band have made a decision. They're going to continue without you. You're free. And I was like, oh shit. That's
yeah.
not how I thought this was going to go.
Wow, wow. Well, that's a drag. It's you said it best, man. I mean, bands and this, and I've talked about it a lot on this podcast. It's fucking hard,
Yeah.
and it's not just physically hard because let's face it, when it gets to a certain level, it's not very physically hard.
Yeah.
It is emotionally almost impossible sometimes.
Yeah. And like,
Especially like you said, if somebody is somebody you don't like, you know, and you are tethered to them, and you've got
yeah.
to see them every fucking day, all day. That's when it gets really tough. You know,
Yeah,
that's
and
when it
like
gets really tough.
for me, I was the youngest member of the band by a couple of
Yeah,
years. So like the rest of the dudes in the band were like 5 years older than me nearly, and like I was the youngest guy in the band. Frank and I at the time both straight edge, neither of us drank. So it's like a couple of guys in the band love to party, two dudes in the band don't love to party, and
right.
it makes for a difficult thing to do. And a lot of people, they romanticize what being in a band is about, that rock and roll lifestyle. And for most people who have toured the world and have done lots of touring, they can tell you what a fucking airport looks like and what a venue looks like.
Exactly.
And if you're lucky, you get a couple of hours free to run around whatever city you're in and try and see something or go and buy souvenirs for someone
Yeah.
before you've got to be back for sound check, and then it's straight into the show, and then out of the show it's load out, and then you're straight in the van or the bus to go to the next place. So it's one of those things that people don't understand and realize what parts of your life you have to give up to maintain the life to actually go and tour religiously and
Yeah.
relentlessly for months on end. And everyone goes through these like arcs of it's great, it's fucking shit, it's great again, it's shit again, and you just hope that by the end of the tour you're leveling out on and up so that you can
Right.
look back at it and with rose tinted glasses and go, yeah, that was fucking fun, let's
That
plan
was
the next
great.
one.
Well, I do remember that about you and your brother specifically on days off in like Japan specifically. We all went and
Yeah.
hung out, and you guys both carried cameras with you, and were and that's not unusual to carry cameras. You guys took photos of everything, and they were really good photos. I remember seeing them. Like you would send me ones like with me in it. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
pose at somewhere or whatever, and I was like, God damn, this guy's a really good photographer too. You know?
And he sent me some photos recently of that graveyard.
Oh yeah, yeah,
That and
Japanese.
he's
Yeah.
got photos of the graveyard with the sun setting. I'll dig them out and I'll send them to
Mm.
you because like it was like as soon as he sent them to me, I was like, "Fuck! I forgot we did that." And it was
Yeah.
like one of the coolest things ever to go and spend a day with a bunch of new pals that
Yeah.
we'd only just met in a fucking crazy graveyard with God knows how many ravens that just descend
Yeah.
on this graveyard when the sun comes down. It's like it's the stuff like that touring's all about. It's those
Absolutely.
experiences and those memories that they live with you
Absolutely.
forever, and the friends you make when you're on tour. Like we met for the first time 2007 and we're still friends now and we're still on this podcast. So it's like
Exactly.
that's what touring's about. For all the hard parts that come with it, the relationships you build with people on the road are relationships that will take you for the rest of your life.
And that's absolutely the truth. I mean, I have 30 years in this, and it's all of my friends are people I know from this. And to quote Brian Baker, he just succinctly said one time, I said something about he said referred to somebody's name, And he goes, yeah, I know them from punk. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like from just punk. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's transition a bit. So the band, you quit the band, and I know you went and worked at a college, but let's leading up to where you are now. You currently work for Marshall, which I think
Yes.
is rad for you, but I think it's also very beneficial for them, because my biggest gripe with a lot of companies is, they don't have guys a lot of the times. A lot of the times they do, but a lot of the times they don't have a guy like yourself that has the unique experience of being someone like we just said, that has traversed the planet and played shows to no one in a van, and then a show to everyone in a bus. You've gone the whole gambit, and now you're working for the most ubiquitous, famous amplifier company of all time. So I just think that's awesome, and I'm really proud of you, and congratulations.
Thank you, man. Like it really means a lot. Like this, the company means the world to me. Like they've been my
Yeah,
favorite amps for forever. Like
me
they
as
were
well.
what I toured with like all the time. Like my JMPs. Like you can see the rack behind you. I've got
I
more in the
can.
corner over this side, and I've got more in the corner over this side. But yeah, for me, like when I got the opportunity to go and do some bits for the company. So like you said, I spent 8 years working in education, and my kind of time in education while I was playing in other bands at the same time and doing like freelance recording production work was I had this job of like a curriculum developer. So my job was to look at how you can marry where you finish your education with when you start industry. There's a big learning curve to go from finishing studies to actually working in the job. So
Sure.
it was, what can we do to bridge that gap? So my job was like in getting people to come in and do master classes and to do talks about industry, and like we put trade shows on and stuff where we could just get kids in a room and just say to them, here's the people you're going to work for in the future. Don't fucking talk to me. Go and talk to them about what they can do for you and what you can do for them. That's what it should be. And at the time, it was fun. It was interesting to do it. And then I got a phone call from a friend who I worked with after finishing Gallows. I ended up doing some work in like a youth recording studio, teaching kids how to record. And a friend of mine just called me out of the blue one day and was just like, so I've got a job running a studio at Marshall Amps in Milton Keynes. Any chance you can help me learn how to record again? Because he's been out of the industry for a while.
All
And I
right.
was like, yeah, man, I can do that. Come on down. So he came in, like we did a recording session together. And then he called me up a couple of weeks later and was just like, thanks for your help with that. Like it's been really like helpful, and like all of the stuff you've given me afterwards with like the contacts, it's been wicked. And he went, I want to pay you back. I had 6 months to get the studio up and running before the first band comes in to record. And he's like, they're now coming in 7 days. Is there any chance you can come in and help me get the studio actually running? So I went in as like a Pro Tools expert to help get the desk to talk to Pro Tools and make it talk to the room and do some test recordings with them and make sure everything was up and running, and support Adam, the studio manager, on basically whatever he needed for a week to get it going. While I was there, I met a bunch of the people that work at the company, and I met the commercial director at the time, who's now the managing director, and we just got on really well. And
Yeah.
he liked my background, he liked my education background, my performing background being in Gallows, and was just like, how would you feel about coming and doing some hands-on experiential stuff for us? So I ended up going in and doing like a series of masterclass workshops where we just did like under 20 people in a room, and we did one on the music industry, we did one on an introduction to recording, one on like advanced recording techniques, and one on introduction to live sound. And they went really well. The company loved what they did, people gave really good feedback on it. And I actually have my wife to thank for me getting the job, because after my first session there, G came to the first one to come and watch it. And like Alex came over and he was talking to G, and she was like, are you happy with what Steph's done today? And Alex was just like, yeah, we're really happy. This is exactly what we wanted from him. And she went, well, when are you going to give him a fucking job then?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I stood there and I was like, oh fuck, this is going to go one of two ways. And luckily it went the right way. Did a couple of sessions for them, and then he just sent me an email and was just like, what's it going to take for you to come on board full time? I can't stop thinking about what your wife said. Tell me what you need. So I gave him a list of what I wanted, what I'd need to make it work, and did my final 2 sessions. And then he was just like, right, offers on the table. We want you to come on. We want you to be the head of education for the company. It's a job we've never had before. And the idea behind it is to support bands on the record label at Marshall, the live agency at Marshall. And it's also to look at that next generation of musicians and what can we do to inspire and educate that next generation of musicians to help solidify the company for the next 60 years of its history. And like a year and a half later, and I'm fucking loving life, living best time, having my dream job. It's amazing.
Wow. That's, man, it can never happen to a better guy.
Thank you, man.
And also, as a lifelong Marshall devotee, as you well know, we've had many conversations about it. You know, for me, I have a relationship with Joel at Marshall, Joel Manen, and shouts out to Joel. But having a buddy, like a guy I knew before you worked at Marshall very well, like we just said, we spent, we were in Kyoto 17 years together, and as well as everywhere else in the world. But it's just awesome. It's awesome. When I heard that you started working there, it was almost like I had gotten the job. I was just like, fist in the air, like, fuck yes. I'm so happy for you, man. And I'm happy for them. Like I said, I mean, I think it's great that a company has somebody like you on the inside. You can give them a fresh, like a really interesting perspective as to what it is like to be a real, a musician actually doing it on the other end, like the guy that's using their product. And that's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, 100%. Because up to this point, the company, like, they'd never had someone like me be involved in it. And it's really good because while I sit and job head of education, my job kind of moves across multiple areas. I work with the marketing department. I work with our music division in the studio, bringing people in and doing recording sessions and like artist development sessions with them. But then I also sit in the R&D meetings, talking to them about my experience playing and what the gigging musicians want and need, and like bringing people in to do focus groups and chat to them about what they're missing in their rigs, what they could look for in their rigs, what in our arsenal can help and support them, what we're missing and what we could be doing to help. So it's a really fulfilling creatively job. I was nervous I was going to miss the touring side of it because I've had to stop the bands that I was playing in now because this is kind of all encompassing.
Sure.
But I'm getting everything I ever wanted out of it, from spending time in the studio songwriting with people and doing pre-production through to sitting in board meetings about what our next roadmap of amps for the next 5 years is going to look like.
Well, and it's also proved a theory I've always had, that when you tour like you and I have, you are getting on the job training for so many other jobs. You know what I mean? You are an asset to desk job, other side of the desk careers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really are. There's so many companies like Marshall or Fender or Gibson, whatever, that really could benefit from guys like that have done what you and I have done. Guys that have do want to stop touring, that maybe settled down, had families, had kids, and there could be such an asset to any of these companies, pedal companies, amp companies, guitar companies, or agencies, managerial, managers, whatever. So I just think it's great, and it's you and I have always talked about my undying love for the the 900, the JCM 900, and to have somebody at Marshall that I've talked at length, before, and we did it before you were at Marshall. We just we both love Marshall amps, and I love them all. I just love that one because to me, it's like the underdog. It's a special thing. Man, that's just so awesome. And I'm so happy for you. And, I love you to death. And I'm glad, was it 2 years ago? Tim and I came over and did 3 acoustic shows there in England.
Yeah.
And we had you and your wife, Gigi, do acoustic performances with us. And so that was toward the end of your sort of playing live situation.
Yeah, that was like, I mean, you fucking threw me in the deep end with that one, to say the least. G and I, our band Lyoness was like a bluesy rock and roll band where we'd never done anything like outside of me having lots of amps on stage with lots of sub-octave fuzz riffs going on all the time. And then, yeah, you're just like, yeah, we're looking for a band to come and do this. How would you guys feel about doing some acoustic shows with us? And I just said to G, I was just like, fuck, we got to do it. We can't say no. And she was like, when is it? And I was like, it's in like 2 weeks. She's like, what do you mean it's in? I was like, it's in 2 weeks. It'll be fine. She was like, we need to rewrite the entire set to just me and you with one acoustic guitar and me. And I was like, yeah, it'd be fine.
Yeah,
And
we
we were
got it.
like, we turned up at that first showing. Where was the first show? Leeds. We were still figuring out what the arrangement of the songs was going to be and how to play the songs before that show. And like, you guys were on sound checking and we were in the back and we were just like, should we play the songs one more time? And we played it so fucking badly. And I was like, let's not do this again until we go on stage and just see what happens. And luckily it worked out. And we had a fucking great time doing it, man.
You guys did great. I knew you would. And I'm glad you did it because, what had happened is, I think it was 2021. So everything was coming out of COVID and all that. And we weren't able to go over as planned because of whatever restrictions, but Tim and I could make it over just to do because we love the UK so much, just as a show of good faith, okay, we could get over there and we could just do this brief thing. And right before we went over there, Tim hit me and was like, dude, we're playing full sets. Like, we're not just doing 3 or 4 songs. We're doing, so we can't just go up there cold. We got to have let's make it more of a show, an event. Who do we know? And immediately I was like, well, Steph, they could do it. It's fine. And then I had so much confidence in you
that I'm glad you had the confidence.
I know. I was like, you got it. And you guys killed it. It was amazing.
Thanks,
the crowd loved it. And I'm so glad it's so special now because neither one of us knew this was going to happen for you.
Yeah.
And you're not, I'm sure you'll play live again at some point, but you're not currently doing it. So I'm just glad we had the opportunity to do it then.
Yeah. And it was for me, it was good because I got to show G, this is what that life can look like for you.
Sure.
Because for her, she's got an amazing voice. She's a fucking phenomenal singer. And it's all she's ever wanted to do. So when we got the opportunity to do it, I was like, look, we've done the circuit in the UK. This is a chance to go and play with the big boys. Let's fucking get out there and give it everything you've got. And for her, it was a good way to introduce her to what this life could look like.
Sure.
And it was we had the best time doing it. We've got that photo somewhere of the 4 of us in that photo booth in Kingston, which is hilarious because I've got that at home. I'll find it and send it to you.
I want to see
but,
that.
When we did that, it brought everything together for us. And it was just so much fun to go out on the road and just hang out with friends. For me, old friends, for her, brand new friends.
Yeah.
And for her to just experience it. And then, I had no idea my journey was going to take me into working for Marshall. So for me now, it's the journey from getting from that period through to where I am now is it feels like an absolute lifetime ago, not 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you've done a lot and you do a lot. You've always done a lot. And yeah, man, I'm just really proud of you. Oh, wait, before I let you go, I got to ask, I do it with everything. The one that got away. So,
oh, mate.
You've got to have, a guitar, a pedal, or an amp, or something. So what's yours? You got one?
Yeah, I've got loads. 69 Deluxe Gold Top was the one that got away. Yeah, I had a 69 Deluxe Gold Top. I bought it and I loved it. Most of my guitars are Les Pauls or Telecasters. They're my 2 jams. And I went through a phase of just buying when I was in the midst of Gallows and it was $2 to the pound on exchange rate. Yeah. I just went through a phase of buying as many vintage Les Pauls as I possibly could, mid 70s. My number one is a black 73 custom. Yeah. And that's been my guy for forever. I paid $600 for it and it was cheap as fuck. Some guy flew over from Paris, met me in London. It was a sketchy deal. And I walked away with this incredible 73 custom for nothing. And that was the thing that kind of set me on this trend of just buying custom Les Pauls. So I went through this phase of buying as many mid-70s Les Paul customs as I possibly could in every single color I could find. And one day an opportunity came up and this guy was just selling. It was a 69 Deluxe Gold Top, all original, no breaks, nothing. It was super clean. And I paid very, very little for it for what it was worth at the time. And I took it to America. We ended up doing the recording with Joby for that EP, the Gallows EP with it.
Yeah.
And like, I remember playing it, and the whole time I had it, I was just like, fuck, I don't want to break it. I don't want to damage it. Like, this isn't really something that I can vibe with the right way, because I'm just fucking scared I'm going to break this thing that,
Yeah.
in a couple of years' time is going to be worth a lot of money. And if I kept it, it would definitely be worth a lot more money than I sold it for. And that was it. I just, one of those things where I couldn't appreciate it the way I wanted to. My 73 Black Beauty, I've had the neck snapped on it 3 times. I've put it through a fucking wall. Like, it's got battle scars everywhere.
All right.
But I don't care about damaging it, because the damage has already been done. Now it's just going into surgery again to get fixed, and then I'll bring it back out again until I damage it again. But that one, it was in such good nick that I was just like, I don't want to be the guy to put the scratch on it.
Fuck this up, yeah.
Whereas for all my other gear, like that 2204, so that 50-watt JMP behind me, I sold that and I bought it back again. I've got others, like, in fact, over the last few years, I've rebought back a lot of gear that I sold to other people that's come up online, and I've bought it back again.
Yeah.
So like that's been my go-to recently, is going down the route of finding what I've sold in the past, and when it pops up on like Facebook Marketplace, and just drop a message, and I'm just like, how much do you want for that thing? Let's talk.
You sold the gold top.
I sold the gold top. I sold it to a shop in London, like a shop called New Kings Road Vintage Guitar Emporium. It's like a proper old place where like they had loads of like Richie Sambora's guitars and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's like,
I know the
players. Yeah.
I think I know it's that street. Is that the street where it's all guitar stores?
So that's Denmark Street you're thinking of.
That's right.
This is like the other side of London, in like Hammersmith way. And I actually bought from that guy. I brought a 75, the Tobacco Burst custom that you were asking me about on that last run of shows. I bought that from that guy, and then I ended up trading that in for one of my artisans, I think, because I've had like 6 Les Paul artisans. They're like my favorite guitar in the world.
Yeah.
And I traded it. Bought that from him, traded some other guitars in the meantime, and then when it came time for the gold top sell, I messaged him and he was just like, I would love to sell that for you. And he got me a really good deal on it. So I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to reinvest it. I've got no idea who it went to. It went to the shop, and someone in the shop bought it. But it's one of those, like, if I had the chance to buy it back now, I'd 100% buy it back, because
you've thought about it.
There was something about those 69 Deluxe. When you just play one note, don't know what it is, the mini Hummer, they just sustain forever. It's like sustain for days. And it's so rich sounding. It's got the bite that you want of like a Telecaster, but it's also got the warmth of a Les Paul at the same time. And I don't know. It's one of those, that's the one that got away.
There was something special about those Deluxes. I remember there was one in a pawn shop when I was a kid. It was a gold top, and I wanted it so fucking bad. And then I had an obsession with them forever. But the reason I had asked you about that Tobacco Burst custom is because Tobacco Burst customs are not. That's an odd looking custom. They didn't do many Tobacco Burst customs, and I am definitely a Les Paul custom guy as well. I have standards. I have great standards, but man, there's something, and it's only aesthetics. I mean, they do play different as well. They sit different. They're heavier. Whatever. They do sound different, but man, it's all aesthetics too. It's just like the custom is like the grand piano of guitars,
Yeah, and that's it for me. It's always been like, there's something about it. The first one I ever had was like, it was actually a Chinese knockoff that I had. That I didn't realize I'd bought a Chinese knockoff early on. Like, I went into a shop in Denmark Street, found this guitar, and it was cheap. And they were just like, yeah, this is a great Gibson. And I was like, oh, awesome. Why is it so cheap? And they went, oh, no reason. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
sure. Found out later that it was a fucking knockoff. But it was just a black custom. And when I found this one, this has just been my guy forever. Every song I've ever written pretty much has been written on this 73 that I've got, that has now been destroyed so many times. And customs were my thing. There's something about the way they look, the big diamond in the headstock.
That's the thing.
And they do, when you put it on, the thing about a Les Paul that I love, you've got a guitar, the weight of it, they are heavy as fuck.
Yeah.
But they just feel right in your hands. And then on the other end of the scale is a Telecaster, which is the complete polar opposite to that.
Sure.
but for me, somehow feels the same. The
I
two guitars together, that's
I
it.
fully agree with you. I'm a Telecaster and a Les Paul guy, and I think it's because of the boxiness of the Telecaster. The
Yeah,
It's not contoured, it's not easy. It kind of makes you earn it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um,
hundred
I
percent.
I'm with you on that. I think we've had this talk before too. Uh,
Yeah,
well, anyway, okay. Well, I will not take up much more of your time. We're at about an hour. I love you, buddy, and it's so good to
I
see you.
love you too, man. It's so
Yeah,
good to see
man.
you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, and good luck and congrats over there at Marshall. I can't wait to come over there and see you there,
Yes,
and do the
come hang
tour.
out in
And
our studio.
yeah, and just I'm gonna take a whole bunch of stuff with me when I leave, and it'll be great.
You got the best part is the fucking we've got a museum. When you walk into reception on the first floor is like a mezzanine and it's just a museum. And we've got like number one in a glass case in the museum. We've got one of Jeff Beck's guitars to the right hand side of you. We've
Fuck.
got a PRS that was made for Jim by Paul Reed Smith. Like you're gonna love
Wow.
it, man.
Well,
You're gonna
you
love it.
guys, everyone heard it right there. You just offered me all of that stuff for free, and I appreciate it. All right, buddy. We'll talk at you soon, Steph. Thanks for doing this,
Thanks,
man.
man.
All right,
Thank you.
buddy. Bye.